right, I really like today's chapter, and to understand why, we're going to have to take a look at Friday's video. When speaking about AI, one of the most annoying things, I think, is that people love to just extrapolate way out. And they love to make claims about AGI and how we're all going to be doomed, and they talk about Terminator scenarios or, whatever. And it is exciting to do that, but it's very theoretical, and I think it distracts away from the present moment where AI is today. So this chapter, like the last one, really shook out in two parts: the scary future and the scary now. And that was the reason I showed the clip from Friday, is that was really something I was looking for in this book, to be very thoughtful about what's realistic and what's not. So going along with the structure of the chapter, we will start with the scary future. And right now, AIs are actually pretty narrow in scope, but their capabilities are getting wider, and that has made people start to think about AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. And the author takes us through this thought experiment that was proposed by Nick Bostrom, which is the paperclip maximizing AI. You have an artificial general intelligence that is tasked with producing as many paperclips as possible. And in this AI, in its quest to generate as many paperclips as possible, gets rid of all the humans so that it never gets shut off, and it destroys the earth so it can get more and more materials to generate as many paperclips as possible. And because it's an AGI, and it has capabilities that humans don't, it actually builds a better AI. And this new AI is called an ASI, or an artificial superintelligence. And this is the point where we're getting very theoretical. Basically, an ASI is dangerous because no human has any capability of understanding it, and so trying to align an ASI with human interests is basically impossible. But why do people talk about this so much? Because, to be clear, even though ChatGPT is very impressive and technically very capable, it's not an AGI. AGI doesn't exist yet. But the reason this stuff comes up is because of emergence, and that's when AI is able to outperform humans at particular tasks. So most famously, AI is now able to outperform humans at both chess and the game of Go. And I really liked the way that the author ended this chapter. He says, "The focus on apocalyptic events robs most of us of agency and responsibility." Now, while that discussion of AGI and ASI can seem very scary, those things may never come to pass. What is scarier is what's happening today. And I read the chapter and I kind of narrowed it down into four main things. So the four things that Ethan Mollick raises in this chapter are bias, ethical issues with AI training, AI vulnerability, and then finally AI regulation. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, are not biased in and of themselves, but they're biased based on the training data and the decisions of the engineers who build them. So AI companies, they mostly use training data from what's available on the open web, which, as Ethan Mollick points out, is nobody's idea of a non-toxic friendly place to learn from. And the engineers themselves tend to be male computer scientists living in Western countries, a lot of them on the West Coast with liberal values. So that gives AI a skewed view of the world. This bias can manifest itself in a variety of ways, but I really liked the first example he gave of Stable Diffusion generating images of judges. The statistic that's mentioned in the book is that 97% of the time when Stable Diffusion is asked to generate a picture of a judge, it will generate a picture of a male judge, even though 34% of judges are actually women. So I repeated this experiment in ChatGPT in a very unscientific way, and sure enough, on first pass, I got a picture of all men. Running it again, though, did generate one woman. Next, we'll talk about some of the other ethical issues in AI training. First, there's the acquisition of data. A lot of times, AI companies aren't asking for permission to train on your data. For example, if you're a Reddit user, some of your posts have probably been used in training AI. Additionally, there's the concern of copyright. This is probably the most well-known right now. And as the book says, AI doesn't really plagiarize in the way that it would be where someone copies a piece of work and says it's their own. It plagiarizes in the sense that it trains on data that it sees, so it's not storing direct copies of any of the work that it trains on, but those works are embedded in some way inside of its brain. And if certain symbols or certain things show up in its training data often enough, that can cause unintended consequences. And a great example of this are the images I showed earlier of those judges. Did you notice anything familiar? Yeah, those are Coca-Cola cans. Now, I did cheat a little bit because my prompt asked for red soda cans, but I never said anything about Coca-Cola specifically. This is a great example of when particular material is overrepresented in the training data, it can cause the AI to learn things that we never intended for it to learn. And the third ethical issue in AI training is the cost it can have on workers who are giving feedback to the AI. So the book describes this process of RLHF, which is reinforcement learning from human feedback. And here there are workers who are not paid well around the world who actually look at the replies from AI and they need to rate them. And unfortunately, these workers are exposed to a steady stream of violent and graphic images that come out of the AI. Of course, we want AI to behave ethically, but is this the most ethical way to arrive at that result? That's a big question that doesn't have an easy answer. The third major issue that comes up in the book is AI vulnerability. And the first among these is prompt injection. And this is basically where someone feeds secret instructions to an AI to get a different result. And the author has this great example where he's actually put a secret message inside his university webpage. And just out of curiosity, I went and had a look, and sure enough, I found it. There it is. The second vulnerability with AI is that it's totally possible to jailbreak it. And this is the idea that an AI may have been trained not to do certain things, like it won't give you instructions on how to make a bomb, or it won't give you instructions on how to hurt people. But if you ask the AI for something else, like if you ask it for help preparing to act in a play, the AI has no problem referencing that same knowledge because it's not helping you with the same goal. And he gives the example of getting instructions for napalm by pretending to be in a pirate play. When you see examples like that, it kind of makes you doubt the feasibility of AGI. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you would think that these machine learning systems, if they were truly intelligent, they wouldn't necessarily have that vulnerability. Once you're able to manipulate the AI to overcome its pre-programmed ethical presets, you can have it do some pretty scary things. And he gives the example of a 2023 study where LLMs were used to simulate emails to Parliament, basically by scraping publicly available information about Parliament members. This AI was able to generate targeted phishing emails for each member of the Parliament. That is absolutely something that can happen today. Phishing emails without AI are still pretty prevalent and work pretty well. And if they're supercharged with things like AI, that can be very, very scary. AI regulation is the last thing that came up in this part of the chapter. Everyone agrees that, or at least most people agree that AI needs to be regulated in some way, but no one knows quite the right way to do it because AI development is happening so fast that governments are struggling to keep up. And even if governments could keep up, there's so much competition because there's so much potential profitability in AI. Governments are often incentivized not to regulate because they don't want to get in the way of innovation. And to be fair to governments, it's pretty hard to figure out how to regulate AI in a way that doesn't slow down innovation. And aside from just banning AI outright, it's pretty hard to know how you would mitigate the risks of AI while still allowing it to continue. Probably the most effective mitigant for AI risk will be education, as Ethan Mollick mentions at the end of the chapter. The more people that understand how AI works and its risks and its capabilities, then better regulation can be pursued. Although this chapter was not as optimistic as maybe a Cleo Abrams video might be, it was a pretty good read, and tomorrow will be the last chapter of part 1. It's called 4 Rules for Co-Intelligence. I'm curious what those are, and for that, I will see you tomorrow.